If you are here, once again, thank you for joining us. This is our official beginning. This is the energy body transformation and realignment process, version 2020. We are in the second week of this strange journey. And for those of us that were here last week, we went through a very, very unique and powerful process of opening up two of the most primary conductive energy centers in the human body at this stage of the ascension process, the Earth Star and the Root Chakra. And so today we're going to be going just kind of one step further. We're actually moving upwards in the energy body and starting to learn about just a few more of the structures, a few more of the things, a few more of the the activations and the frequencies that are sort of activating within the body. And I'm seeing your comments there already. Please do. Thank you for helping her out. We're going to get everybody's audio situated. And don't worry, guys, the recording is working. And we do have audio on the recording. So even if you didn't hear this part, don't worry, we're going to get everybody situated. But that said, let us begin. Because here we are. And for a lot of us, like I said earlier, you're joining in the second week. Some people are going to join in week 3 and week 4 and on and on and on. That is perfect. There's no barrier toward receiving this energy. There's no prerequisites. There's no sort of internal process that you have to go through prior to getting here other than just being led. A lot of people are here for entirely different reasons, totally different reasons. Some of us are here because we're stepping into a new stage of our life. Some of us are here because we're healing ourselves. Some of us are here to, work with a program, a sort of thought form that we've been holding on to. Other people are just here to pick up a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of understanding, some healing, and they're going to go on their way, the next stage of their journey. So thank you for making it here. Once again, we survived the first leg of our journey, for those of you guys that were here last week, and so congratulations. This week we're going to be moving into some new territory with the reconfiguration and the clearing of the energy present in one of the most important chakras involved in the activation of our true energetic potential. And notice I'm saying potential from the very beginning, because if there's one thing I've learned just about the sort of the momentum and the flow and the passage of pressurized electrochemical or emotional energy through the body, is that there are a lot of potentials, but there are very few guarantees. And even more so, and hopefully I'm not confusing everything from the start, there are also very, very few, if any, absolutes. What I mean by that is everyone experiences this differently. Everyone perceives this energy differently. Everyone is going to have their own individual process, understanding, or even their own internal visual representation of how this energy moves and works in the body. And so part of the overall design and mission of this very unique 7-week process is that we're not here to place a cutout or to overall educate you on how it should be, on what you should be perceiving or feeling. What we're doing is we're giving you a general overview and then a process by which we can open up these energy centers so that you yourself can begin to unpack and understand and learn how to use and feel and, ultimately begin to transmit this energy outward. And if you were here last week, you know that one of the primary functions of the Earth Star chakra, which was our first stop on this strange journey, one of the primary functions of some of these chakras as we continue to move into fourth density is that their sort of purpose, or we could even just say it, their function begins to change. And the chakras are not necessarily only valves or circular passage points or spinning wheels or disc through which we pass consciousness energy in the body. At a certain stage of our journey, they also begin transmitting that energy outward. In the coming weeks, I'll show you a little bit of a description visually of how that works. Some of you guys are already going to know, but today we're working with one of the most, I would say, potent energy centers in terms of transmitting something outward. And we're going to be looking at the frequency of emotion, experiences that relate to this chakra. Especially, this is where for some people it gets a little weird, because it has everything to do with our sexuality, our intimacy, and not just sexual intimacy, but intimate connections of all kinds. And most importantly, that passion, the passion that we carry and the ways in which we express that in our world, because the sacral chakra is such a potent I guess we could say, holding ground for those energies. It plays a very, very important role. And so along with that, we're going to be discussing a very, very important concept. I don't hear this referred to in many places, not meaning that I have some sort of, special view into it, but what I think it is just one of the most important elements of why people stay stuck in cycles in our lives. And I believe in, in my work and the things that I observe in people is that also in myself is that the sacral chakra holds a tremendous amount of what we call the body's emotional pH value, and how this relates, how this energy can be suppressed, how can it be reversed, how we can keep ourselves stuck in these sort of weird cycles over and over again, and even how this energy can be sort of harvested or siphoned or kind of pulled out of the body and used against us. And so we're going to be talking about a little bit of that today, and I see your comments there. I'm going to be looking at you. We're going to be answering those. If you guys are new in this class here today, oftentimes the way that we'll go about the questions or the comments is I tend to address stuff as we're about to transition out of the next slide. And so if you're here for the first time, don't worry, there are no dumb questions. We might not get to all of them, but feel free to throw questions in the chat. If you're hearing me talk about stuff, and it's like, hey, so what about this or that? Feel free to throw that in there. There are truly no dumb questions, and I encourage people to ask because we're trying to create sort of a safe environment for people to come to just a different layer of understanding about non-physical phenomenon. And that's not to say that I have some expert knowledge, but I do believe that we are all unpacking this together at the same time. And, some of us are here to assist in just the unpacking of that and just hopefully the explanation. So without going on a weird long rant about that. Looks like we got audio connected. Thank you, Luciana. I'm glad you got the audio working. Good job. There we go. Cool. All right. So let's us continue. So we're going to be talking about that emotional pH value. There's also a bit of actually I shouldn't say a bit, there's a big relationship with emotional pH value and one of the most important meridians in the body, the pericardium. That's kind of a whole other class though, because today we're also going to be moving into what I believe is one of the most misunderstood and also, just very, very particular and also multi-purposed energy systems in the body, and that's the chakra zone circulatory system. A lot of you guys that are here will have already heard of it. You'll have some base knowledge of it. It's called the nadial complex. Other people call them the nadis. Basically what they are is the circulatory system for your chakras, and a lot of people call it an entirely separate circulatory system. I believe the nadial complex is actually made up of a network of our meridians, our chakras, individual passage points, and also well, it's a whole other can of worms. We're going to get there in a little bit before I go on a crazy rant. After we talk about this crazy nadial complex, we're going to be starting a bold new clearing protocol. For some of you guys, well, for most of you, if you've done a private session with me, you might have gone through this process, but basically what we're doing today is awakening and igniting a new template in the body. It's essentially a retuning of the tone, the frequency, and in certain cases the actual color wavelength, the perceptual, internalized, visual representation of the frequency of the sacral chakra. One of the things we're discovering is that there is a great shift. There's awakening and quite literally a transference or an activation of energy that's occurring within the sacral centers of many, many people on this planet right now. It's my understanding that if you're here, there's a great chance that you are one of them. So what we're doing today is we're helping to just activate the human body on a new level. And the reason why we do this is because it assists us in really manifesting and creating, or rather, we could say magnetizing those things that we desire, those aspects of our mission. In certain cases, it'll be partners. In certain cases, it'll be encounters. In certain cases, it'll be jobs. In certain cases, it'll just be events. But the sacral chakra plays a very, very important role in that because it's essentially the seeding point. It's basically this ignition point for a lot of that passion-based energy of intimacy. And you guys will see in a little while, hopefully as we go through this process today, how critical and important, and also how much control that we have over this energy center, as well as, if we are not sovereign and aware of it, the ways in which it can be controlled by others. And so hopefully we will be demonstrating that for you guys today, and also going through a very unique process that each of you guys is gonna just perceive and feel in your own way. It's entirely individual to each of you, and so I'm excited to do that with you. Audrey says it's all a weird jumble, but 2 Black Panthers really stood out to me in your dream. I love that. Black Panther energy is it's literally all over the place right now. That's a cool sign. But before we get started, you guys, and feel free to throw any other questions in there. We're going to do a little bit of a synchronization exercise as we start out today, just to kind of get everyone centered. If you guys have been in previous classes, you'll know that in our energy clearing, we like to spend a certain amount of time really locking in, synchronizing, and essentially for a lot of us, and you can see it down there on the bottom of the screen, we have the ability at this stage to press the record button on the human body. And what I mean by that is some of you guys are already experiencing this, but as soon as you come into some of these classes, especially this one, you guys are going to start it's almost as if you're tuning out. It's almost as if we kind of get a little bit unconscious, a little bit sleepy, a little bit meditative. It's almost as if the sort of brain waves begin to vibrate and activate and sort of, move in synchronization with everyone here. And so one of the things we're going to do in the beginning here today, before we go forward, is we're going to synchronize the energy body. We're going to press the record button. And so if you guys were here in our tarot class or the intuitive activation, you've done something a little bit similar to this. And so we're going to start out today, guys. I'd like you to take your hands and just take your fingers and put all your fingertips together. It's very, very simple. What we're doing is we're sort of joining the meridian points, the acupressure points. We're just sort of linking up our energy. It's a very simple gesture. You don't have to put your hands together, but you can if you choose. What we're doing is we're just linking our hands. And I'd like everyone here to just take a few deep, slow breaths, kind of like you're pumping up your belly like a balloon or a basketball. Many of you are very familiar with that deliberate style of breathing we do in the beginning, but if it's your first time here, it's just a deep, slow breath. A bit exaggerated, a bit gentle, and as you exhale, you just completely deflate the balloon inside you. Acknowledge that you're here today amongst a group of multidimensional beings, multidimensional travelers currently existing here on the earth plane that have been summoned, you've been called, and you've been gathered together here today to continue the process of activation and awakening and transformation in this physical body. And in the next few moments, I'll count from 3 to 1, and as a group, we'll take a very deep and deliberate breath in, and we'll hold that breath for just a few moments, and when I say we'll very deliberately let that breath out, and as we do that, we'll create a sound. It's a little bit like a snake or a steam valve. We're going to go shh, just allow that sort of, whichever way you choose, but we're sort of pressurizing the out breath, and we're really letting that go. We're going to do 3 of those, and on the 3rd one, we're going to be creating a vibration. For those of you guys that were here for session 1, you know that we use a modality called Scalar Toning. It's the ability to open up non-physical energy centers in your body through the use of an actual vibration. And some of you are in public, some of you are at home, and you're not going to be able to create this sound. That's perfectly okay. I'll be doing it for you. But what we're doing is we're synchronizing our energy body in preparation for the work we'll be doing. So just join me, do the best you can with our fingers together. We close our eyes, and let's take that deep breath in together as a group in 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Good job, guys. Let's do one more of those. Take another deep breath in with me. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. Hold it. Release. Good job, everybody. On this third one, we're going to allow a vibration to be emitted from the human body. It's just a simple tone. You can choose to follow me, you can allow your own, or you can simply listen and allow this vibration to reach your body. All is perfect. We just simply allow this energy in this opening, and we are pressing record on the human body. Here we go. Let's take that deep breath in 3, 2, 1. Hold it. Let's gently disconnect any non-organic or parasitic energy from the body. It's a very simple gesture, just like this. You can do it here, you can do it here, you can do it anywhere you want. It's not location specific, but it is a gesture of disconnection, and it's a moment that we take to consciously remove anything that we don't need. For those of you guys that have done sessions with me in the past or have done group work, you'll notice oftentimes I'll do this tone or this sound, and then right after we're done we disconnect. So it's very important as we allow just the clean transmission of energy and the activation of this group that we simply acknowledge ourselves as one being, one sphere, one group, one unit existing on the astral realm. And so thank you. Good job, you guys. For some of you, that's the first time you've ever done that, and I thank you for being a part of this process. We're going to move on. Let us know how you're feeling, you guys. I know we launched right in with a bunch of crazy stuff. Good job, you guys. How are you feeling after that wild tone? I'm having a hard time getting my chat window to show up, so we'll get it in just a moment. But what have we learned so far? We're going to do just a real quick review for last week, because we got some new people here. And so in week 1, what we began to understand is the relationship of the root chakra, some of the characteristics. During the first session of this course, we began to unpack and understand just the frequency around root words, root tones, this sort of structural vibration, which we're going to be using today with the sacral chakra. And what we also begin to understand is that at the 4th density kind of transition that we're in right now, we have the ability, if you scroll down through all the text there to the Earth Star chakra, you'll notice that we introduced last year although it might seem like a year ago, it was last week, we introduced the concept of a capsule phrase. And we're going to be using one of those again today. What it is essentially a vibratory phrase that allows us an additional layer of connection and ability to open and transmit energy through this energy centers. We're going to be learning a new one today for the sacral chakra, but before we do that, we're just going to take a few moments here to just kind of review what we learned about the root chakra. And so as the structural base of the human energy body system, you know, the root chakra rules our physical energy, our drives towards self-preservation. We learned last week that it has a great relationship with, you know, what we may call the hierarchy of needs, the elements of our early childhood programming that sort of, you know, sort of program us with what we deserve, what we're capable of, how our needs are met, that sort of cycle or the sort of stage of psychosocial development known as trust versus mistrust. And for a lot of us, we've picked up a tremendous amount of lack programming, unworthiness, elements of ourself that have been transmitted into us very, very early on that kept us stuck, that kept us in fight or flight. Hence the very special relationship the root chakra has with our adrenal glands, the stress hormone production center of the body. And so last week we learned a bit about how to open the root chakra, some of the vibratory wavelengths, but also the ways in which it's having a very important effect on our lack programming, on what we allow ourselves to receive in the human body. And so we also learned that it's directly connected and also interdependent upon a very important, what we might call secondary chakra in the body, the Earth Star chakra, which for those of you guys that watch session 1 is essentially where the human body plugs into what we call the physical timeline, or the non-physical energetic earth grid that we're plugged into. And so last week we learned how in this 2012 sort of generational kind of activation shift that we're all going through, that Earth Star chakra began to behave a little differently. It's now a tool, a passage point, and a vibratory center existing outside of the human body that has a tremendous role in the timeline choice, in the sort of that sort of radio station frequency that our human body is also broadcasting out into the world. And so last week we went through a very important process of opening up and reconnecting that. For a lot of us, and I saw the comments in the group, it opened up a big can of emotional worms. Let us know how you're doing with that if you can. For those of you guys that experienced some big upsets, and I know there is a delay on this, so I'm going to give you guys a few moments to answer. But yeah, let us know how you're doing, because what we essentially did in the first week is we sort of, it's like this big band-aid that we're ripping off the body. And for a lot of us, it's like, whoa, now I'm faced with all these old childhood themes and all this stuff running back into my body. And the good news is today is going to be a lot easier. Today's a lot more about activating your energy and assigning a frequency wavelength. It's also about releasing shame. It's also about releasing conditioning around your intimacy, around how you connect, around who you let in, and the ways in which we continue to attract intimate encounters of all types. And you know, just so you know, you guys heard me say this earlier, when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean sexual intimacy, because one of the things we're discovering with the fourth density shift is that entirely outside of the wavelengths of sexuality, humans are connecting more intimately, whether they know it or not, on an entirely different level. And so I'm going to reach up here and grab your comments. For some reason my little comment window is hard to get, so you'll see me waving this little mouse thing around trying to make my comment window open up. But thank you. Sean says, I was ready to move. The move day came. It was very good timing. That's a good sign. A lot of people are going to be moving right now, you guys. You've seen just in the past, well, just here today alone, earlier this morning, we had a real big lunar eclipse. We've also had a full moon, and we are at the stage of 2020 in which each and every person is being ushered, being pushed, being pressurized, being given this momentum to make some form of a great transitional change in their life. And so last week we began that seeding process. And so thank you for your comments. Luciana says, I ran into people I hadn't seen in more than 2 decades. Lots of emotions there. Yes. Very much. That is a really, really good example of timeline interactivity and the ways in which timelines will close. And by timelines, for those of you guys that are new here, what I mean is just experiential wavelengths, processes and chapters, and sort of just these sort of, yeah, well, I'll say it again, chapters that we go through with certain individuals and experiences in our life. And at certain stages, we'll create these unconscious shifts. And right now, we are in one of the greatest collective unconscious shifts that we've ever had. These 3 eclipses, it's a physical timeline shift. And so you're going to run into people from the past. They're going to roll back in, and you may feel very triggered. You will also be challenged to interact differently. If you guys are part of the group here that's getting old triggers, old wounds, old people are rolling back in, for a lot of us right now, it's because you are being offered a previous cycle so that you can do something completely different with it. And if you're wondering, what do I do differently with it, Matthew? Maybe there's a few cycles that have just re-shown themselves to me in the past few weeks, is whatever you didn't do last time, if it's like a desire or something from years ago, it'll be, well, what was I trying to do back then? It'll represent itself so that you can do it completely differently. And for a lot of us, we'll be challenged to completely break a cycle, to do or kind of realize or handle something that's been sort of held back for a long time. And so I know we're already going on a big rant here, but it has a very, very special relationship, especially today on July 5th. For those of you that will be watching this later, we are on July 5th in 2020, and right now that has a very, very special relationship just because of some of the astrological things that are going on right now with Capricorn and Saturn, and the level to which we are also experiencing a systematic restructuring. It's going to be internal. Our internal systems are restructuring, hence this course, but also externally within government, within, you know, society, within friends and family. There's going to be a systematic restructuring that will take place there as well. So thank you. Lots of family stuff I see for people. Otto's old soul retrieval stuff from childhood. That's a really good sign. Thank you for being bold. And so a lot of us right now, as we go through this process, especially those of you guys that had big openings in week one, it's going to be like, whoa, this big can of worms popped open. Oh my Lord. That's a really good sign. It's also direct evidence that you are literally reaching the bottom of that jar inside of us. A lot of the energy work, the protocols, and the healing things that we've been going through for the past few years are absolutely legit. They're completely real. But we are now entering the stage of the game in which everyone has much, much greater access. I will even be so bold as to say, just in the past 48 hours, for those of us here on the Earth plane in 2020, between July 3rd and July 5th, we received an even greater level of access over the human energy system. And so I'm going to move on with the slides. You guys can tell I'm going in a... Yes, lots of crying. That's a really good side, Charlene. Keep it up. I'm also going to say this one thing before we move on to the next slides, because I know I'm staying on this one far too long, you guys. One of the things you're going to be figuring out in the coming months is that, and a lot of you guys already know this, one of the most healing things that you can do at this stage of the game is generate tears. Allow a process of deep emotional release. And here's the thing, everyone, it doesn't matter what you're crying about at this stage. You can think of a puppy on the street. You can watch an animal video and start the flow of emotion in your body. But the reason why that's very important is because each and every substance, each and every layer, each and every energy center, each and every organ in your body is interacting on an entirely new level. And as we go through this fourth density activation, your body's natural release mechanism for emotional pressurization, it's tears. And so for those of you guys that can begin to come to terms with the idea that if you've been brought to this course, your body needs to cry, it needs to generate tears. If you're one of the people here that has a hard time getting in touch with the inner child, for a lot of us, we can start that process through finding some way in which we can generate a deep, guttural emotional release. It doesn't matter what it's about. It's that we create a shakeup in this sort of thing in the body. And after a while, for those of you guys that can tap into it, when you really reach into the deep layers of your body, like Charlene said, it's like you have this deep, it's the ugly cry, that like, that deep guttural weeping. And so what we find is that's your body clearing itself. But we are conditioned as humans, oh no, don't cry, especially men, especially the men here. They're gonna be like, don't cry, you bitch. You know what I mean? Because that's what's transmitted into us, right? Unfortunately, as males, they're like, suck it up, bro, suck it up. And you're like, and your body's saying, I'm ready to release. And so if you're here and you're hearing that message, find that version of yourself and be willing. For a lot of us, it happens in the shower. If you can find yourself in the shower, you know, get in there at night and just stay in there and find that inner child inside you. And for some of us, it will be very difficult. You may have to try a few times. That's why sometimes individual clearings can help. But yeah, I'm going to check your comments, then we're going to get into the sacral chakra. Thank you. Astrid, I feel like a pro in crying. Hell yeah, that's a good thing. And I will also say, because here's the thing, you guys, it's like there will be an absolute purpose in it, but for some of us, and I have to mention this, it will also be a wavelength or a practice that we can get also overly kind of caught up in. And there is also, it's very distant for most of us here, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but we have also encountered a method by which the human body will be triggered over and over and over again into a disproportionate amount of emotional release. And so there's always kind of a flip side to a lot of these things, but I would say at this stage of the game, please generate those tears. They're literally going to heal you in ways that even certain body work and certain healings will not. And so Eve Buckley says, what's interesting is a lot of times receiving body work, I'll go into heaving ugly sobs. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but the tears may not always come. That is a really good sign. I also have that as well, Eve Buckley. And so I believe on another level what that is your body generating its own purging mechanism. It's not always going to be the physical flush, but what I find is a lot of times when I have had those, It's like the solar plexus, which luckily that's week 3. So I have a feeling next week some of us are going to get a real good, like a guttural kind of a release. But that, to me, that's some of the deeper layers purging. Some of you guys during that deep cry will even have a kind of a gag. You'll have like this sort of feeling. That's a really good sign. It will also come for some of us with very deep emotions, and so if that's been a frequency that's been sort of suppressed in your body, be gentle with yourself, because not everyone here, it's easy, you know, for not all of us find it very easy to tap into that. So in the beginnings, we'd be very gentle. Otto had a lot of training over the last 2 years. I feel you on that. Absolutely. I did as well. I have to say that, you know, like as a male in this world, I really have found that, you know, over the past few years, it's like we find as empaths, we become deeply affected by the emotional frequencies. And, you know, it's very, very important, at least for me, you know, let it out. So Otto says, do you recommend filling up with positive emotions light after just, or letting things integrate after deep crying? Honestly, this is kind of a vulnerable thing for me, but Otto, for me, I found it very, very easy to like connect with the consciousness of animals. When I found that there's an unconscious emotional release ready for Matthew, it's literally like I'll watch a dog playing outside, or I'll watch an animal video, and this weird thing just sort of kicks in. And you know, for me, I try to bring in the energy of just some form of love, and it might be overly cheesy, but I tend to divert back to some stuff I read in the Law of One very early on, in which they stated, you know, what is the lesson, or what is the remembrance that we hold here, and that is that the moment contains love. And so I will, you know, just allow for an integration, but sometimes, you know, it really doesn't matter what it is that we're sort of crying about. It's the idea that the body will need to release, and it'll let you know when it's appropriate. Anyway, not to go on too long of a rant about it. Ian says, studying various grief practitioners has helped. Martin Prechtel, for one. I hope I didn't mispronounce his name, but thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. I think it's very important. Also, another, just as an aside, for those of you guys that are following where I'm going with this, another very, very useful modality at this stage is Primal Scream. It's called Primal Scream, and there's a whole kind of modality built around it. But the idea that you can release a tremendous amount of energy from the body through this deep physical vocal, like it's like a very, very cathartic experience. Other people will call it the dragon breath, which I believe is kind of like a whole other frequency in and of itself. But speaking of all that fiery stuff, let's get into the sacral chakra, you guys, because we've been going on and on. It's the reason why we're here today, is because we're going to go through some very interesting processes. And so sacral chakra, or Svadhisthana in Sanskrit, as the second stop in our journey, the second of this basic primary 7 energy centers in the body. It's most commonly regarded. Most people understand the sacral chakra as being located within the pelvic region of the body, around the, you know, the region of the genitals, in that, you know, generalized area, usually a few centimeters above the root chakra, nestled somewhere in the midst of those reproductive organs. Now, the exact location, I think, of the sacral chakra is, at this stage, it's more important to kind of understand the frequency of it than it is to understand the specific location, because what I find is that the sacral chakra is more of a miasmatic collection of energy pertaining to that frequency that seems to rest around the genital or reproductive region of the body. I personally don't believe that the sacral chakra is tied specifically to the genitalia or even to the nerve plexus around that area. I believe it is a collection of the frequencies, or almost a control panel for the frequencies of intimacy, emotional expression, sexuality, etc., etc. And so take what you can from that. But the sacral chakra is, you notice my first typo, guys, look, is. I always notice that stuff, that's why I'm mentioning it. The sacral chakra is the seat or ignition point for much of the energy of passion, sensuality, creation, and sexuality that we send and receive in the human body. It is also one of the primary processing centers for the energy of intimacy and how it's expressed in our lives. It has tremendous impact on how we engage, receive, and express our sexuality, and as a result, is one of the most commonly affected areas for those of us dealing with negative energetic manifestations, such as sexual misery implantation, a very, very real thing, holographic trauma insertion, or core wound reactivation, just to name a few. We can get into those specifically if you guys want to ask questions about them. I also have some videos on YouTube that explains the concepts. But those are very, very real experiences. That said, some researchers believe this energy center activates between birth and 6 months. Others say it develops more fully later on, between ages 7 and 14. One of the things I noticed in my research about the sacral chakra, for those of you who have children, I also noticed this in my own son. At a certain age, you'll find that they start sleeping in what some parents call it's like a sleep bug-like position, where they're in sort of like a fetal-like position, or the child will sleep sort of curled up in a ball with their butt up in the air. What I noticed in the research that I did specifically for this class is that a lot of people were, saying that that's actually the age in which the sacral chakra begins to form. It's sort of like the sort of disc or the circular element of the sacral chakra for some people begins to form around the stage in which children will go through that unconscious sort of fetal sleeping position. Now here's the thing, I don't know if that's true, but I think it bears mentioning, just because I think it's just an interesting point toward the development of the energy centers in the bodies, and the ways in which we may unconsciously exhibit certain behaviors or things along the way that will just show signs toward that. Now I don't know who figured that out, but I found it very interesting. And so, regardless of the age of activation, I believe this is one of the most fertile grounds for programming of sexual impulsivity, and especially the interpretation of arousal signals in the body. It's also one of the most impressionable energy centers because it responds or assigns the energy of arousal to a stimulus. In some cases, this can be used to divert or hijack human sexual energy, and even to heavily influence one's sexual behavior, one's sexual preference, how they express that energy, how they will allow the energy of intimacy. It's not just sexually, it will be intimacy of all kinds. And so what we do find for certain individuals that have had real extreme types of sexual trauma in early childhood, that the sacral chakra will be one of the non-physical energy centers that begins to be reprogrammed by that sexual trauma, and it will actually contribute to certain individuals expressing their sexuality through a non-natural transmission of homosexual programming. And that's, I know for some people that's like, what, Matthew, are you saying it could be programmed into the human energy body? It can, it absolutely can. And for some individuals, it will come about through a trauma programming that takes place early on. It doesn't challenge any of the debates around how sexuality preferences actually are created. There's a number of ways. What it does say, though, is that through early childhood trauma, the sacral chakra can be programmed to allow us, or to force us, to express that sexuality in a different way, or through non-threatening or through a less threatening gender. And for some of us, it will be assigned to female. For some of us, it'll be assigned to male. It's a very, very interesting and very, very complex thing to unpack. But for those of you guys that are, starting to understand that, or have encountered certain types of trauma, you've also seen other people that have had that. This is one of the places in which it gets programmed into us. And so, on a more basic day-to-day level, we often find the sacral chakra to be one of the most affected by the phenomenon of emotional or energetic pH value. Now, for those of you guys that are familiar with the third density kind of definition of pH value, it's used to measure the acidity, or I guess the what's the other side of that, or the alkalinity, excuse me, of water, of a substance, of I guess just anything that carries a charge. And so we also have an emotional or energetic pH value in the body. And if you've done a private session with me, you know it's one of the things we talk about a lot. But what it essentially is the tone, frequency, or the specific flavor. It's like a scent that the energy body will give off. It'll be transmitted from certain energy centers of the body, and we find that the sacral chakra is one of the most potent transmitters for that energetic pH value. And so one of the ways you may understand energetic pH value in your own life is a unconscious behavior or an unconscious tendency to only find certain types of individuals attractive. Sometimes we'll, you know, it's like I'm always attracted to those narcissistic dudes. They always do the same thing, or I'm overgeneralizing in a very basic way, but we find that we will always attract certain types of encounters, or certain types of individuals will be attracted to us. Other people will unconsciously attract a certain relationship pattern. It's not necessarily about the person, it'll be the manner or the transactional nature, the interaction that we will initiate or allow. Some of that, I would say a lot of it, has to do with the emotional pH value. And one of the ways you guys can also think of it is it's like a farm, it's like a field, and it only grows corn. Every year we grow corn in this here field, and so, you know, on a certain level, you know, you're only gonna, you know, it's gonna be set up for a thing. It's going to be set up to always generate this frequency or this feeling or this emotion. And what we're finding is that the sacral chakra is one of the most potent holding places for that emotional pH value. I will also mention, I think it shows up on the next slide, another place, just for those of you guys that want to do your own research on this, one of the other #1 places that holds emotional pH value in the body is the pericardium meridian. Yeah, so just Google that later on. But all that said, for those who have endured sexual trauma, narcissistic emotional abuse, or any form of negative projection toward our sexual behavior or expression of intimacy, this energy center can be, and often is, one of the most heavily affected, heavily influenced, and also hijacked. There is a phenomenon, we just mentioned it up there, holographic trauma insertion or core wound reactivation, in which certain individuals, kind of like when they're in the hospital and you have an IV kind of thing put in your arm so they can always take stuff in and out, certain individuals that have endured a lot of sexual trauma in this life in early childhood, within the area of the sacral chakra, it's like they have this little opening there. It's not an implant, it's not even an attachment, but it's almost like an opening in the energy field that will allow things to be influenced. It's very, very common. And so in today's clearing, we're going to be interacting directly with the emotional pH value of the sacral chakra, and we're going to be kind of, you know, like it says down there, lighting a new fire in this energy center for the purpose of kind of burning away old codes, old toxicity, old thought forms. Especially, you guys, I'm going to say it right now, and I guarantee you some of you guys are going to know where this is in your own world. We're going to be especially burning away old shame. Old shame. So thank you for your comments. My little pointer's working so I can see them instantly. Thank you, thank you. I can tell this is going to be an emotional week of release. It might be, Audrey, but I have a feeling. I'm just saying it now. I have a feeling you guys are going to find today's clearing more activating rather than, you know, emotionally triggering. And the reason for that is, I'll tell you right now, and just so you know, we're also seeding our consciousness for the clearing we're going to do. What we're doing is harnessing and reconcentrating that energy. Yes, there's emotion involved, but today's more about empowerment. Week 1 is like, rip the band-aid off. Okay. And then week 2, we're like, all right, let's start rebuilding and restructuring and lighting this fire, essentially, that we're weaving upward. And so I know I'm ranting on this. Let's keep moving on the sacral chakra, guys. Just because there's way more to this, you guys. This is also one of the most, I would say, misunderstood chakras in terms of just trying to pinpoint the exact frequencies of expression, because you guys are going to dive into some of the text and the blogs and all this stuff about the sacral chakra, and you know, some people are going to tell you, oh well, it moves this sacred fluid, it moves this pearl of consciousness upward toward this and that, and each and every culture, each and every group, each and every researcher is going to kind of identify it, they're going to perceive it, and they're also going to explain it in their own way. And so what I've done here is hopefully just compile some of the generalized understandings and also a bit of my own as well. And so let's talk about it. Sacral chakra characteristics can vary, like I just said, depending on your cultural background or belief systems. But one thing we all seem to agree on at this stage is that this is one of our primary processing centers for the energy of sexual and creative and passion energy in the body. We've said that a million times by now, we know. But what's the associated color? It's orange. Most of us understand. Most often it's perceived as an orange color, but I think someone also had a really good comment in the Facebook group, is that they're starting to perceive these differently. I think someone mentioned that they felt the Earth Star chakra as kind of like a collection of, you know, some more earth-based colors, and in my opinion, that is a very, very good example of you tuning into that specific frequency within yourself. And so a lot of people, when they tune into the energy of the sacral chakra, they will tune into the energy of a flame or an orange thing or a fire or a yellow. Excuse me. It'll show up differently for each of us. In some individuals at certain stages of activation, this is perceived as a blue flame of sorts. It's not always a blue flame. But today, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to be creating a blue flame there. Your body's going to absorb it in whatever way it's ready to absorb it. For some people, it's going to be huge. For other people, it's going to be a stepping stone. But for each of us, we will have perceived the energy of the sacral chakra in our own way. It's not always a sexual feeling, but we will feel a stimulation, a flickering, in some cases sort of this gentle vibration or a wavering. It'll be a sensation of desire for a lot of us, because the human body tends to translate the energy of the sacral chakra through the what I call the most common denominator for interpretation of that energy, and it tends to feel as some sort of an arousal energy in the body. I would challenge each and every one of you to, you know, try to separate if you can, try to separate some of what you may perceive as the sexualized arousal that you would get upon stimulating the energy of the sacral chakra, and understand that in fourth density, that energy begins to take a different sensation in the body, and each of us is going to feel it in their own way. And I like to differentiate that with sacral energy, because for some of you guys here today, you're going to be like, Matthew, I don't think this has anything to do with sexual energy. I understand that it does, but I don't feel that it's like that, because the reality is, for each of us, it will be expressed differently. Some of us, it's a creative center, but for most of the population, it's most easily understood or interpreted through the feelings of expression of sexuality. And so I hope that makes sense to some of you guys. It's very, very multi-purpose. And so the associated root sound with the sacral chakra, vam or vang, just to let you know, last week we used vam with the M sound at the end of our root chakra. This week we're going to use vang. You can hear I'm sort of hanging on to the N and the G at the end. You can use either. I've just personally found in my own work, when connecting with just the frequency base of the root chakra, to me the vang works a bit better. It's up to you how you want to do that. Some of you guys aren't here to learn scalar toning, you're here to just receive, so you can just feel that energy as well. And yes, I see your questions and comments there. Thank you. And so the associated physical anatomy, also very, very important, you guys. You're going to see the structural kind of anatomy over there on the right. Hopefully my little camera view isn't blocking it. But what you will notice is that, you know, for most of us, we associate this energy center with the reproductive organs and the genitalia. Specifically, guys, if you're wondering, you know, well what areas? The testes and the ovaries. It's also believed that the sensing organ ruling the sacral chakra. For, you know, some people will even say, well, the genitals isn't that a sensing organ? Some people will say that, but by my understanding and through a lot of the research, they will regard the tongue as the central organ for the sacral chakra, and I believe that it is one of them. However, I also believe, and you know, this is my own interpretation, that the sacral chakra for a lot of us is actually becoming an organ of sensation, or a frequency center of sensation in and of itself. So take what you can from that. But from a structural perspective, in my opinion, if it is actually tied to a physical area in the body, and especially when we're talking about either sexual dysfunction, functioning, programming, especially energy of shame or trauma, I believe that in addition to the actual sacrum bone, you guys can see it there on the image, a lot of sacral energy in the human body lies within a very, very important energetic depository center known as the Psoas muscle. So for some of you guys here, it's going to be the literal gold mine to like releasing deep function, sexual programming, deep trauma programming. If you're one of the individuals in just this world who has experienced that sort of trauma, and you've had intimate experiences in your life, and you feel this sort of like, feel yourself snapping into it, or feeling the remnants of that old trauma, the psoas muscle is a place where it's holding a lot of that. We're going to talk more about it later, but the sacral chakra rules the way we express emotions and sensuality in our lives. It's one of the most fertile points of activation at this stage of the fourth density awakening, because it interacts so heavily with the emotional pH value. Like we just said, the level to which your body will be set up to attract an emotion, to generate an emotion, to generate an experience, to attract an individual with a certain type of emotional frequency. Those are all, excuse me, the emotional pH value. And for those with existing trauma residue in the body, this can be one of the strongest, like absolutely strongest energy centers in the body. But also, another little typo there, guys. I'm so weird with typos. There it is. Yet also, most heavily affected chakras and tends to have direct impact on our behavior, our boundaries, who we allow in, when, and what level. Some of us will have no boundaries whatsoever due to a very, very activated yet unaware sacral center. It's like super on. It's so on that it's sensed by everyone and everything, and we will not have, or will have not been equipped with the level or the awareness to understand when that energy is being sort of used or influenced. And what you're going to find is there are parasitic individuals in this world who will unconsciously pick up on the scent of the energetic pH value of certain areas of the body, and they will be drawn to you for the express purpose of manipulating that energy center in your body. And so it has big impact on our intimacy, our boundaries, in ways that other energy centers don't. Once again, I'm going to bring it back to the meridians just real quickly, because another place that has a huge impact on energetic boundaries is, we talked about it earlier very briefly, pericardium meridian. It's the guardian of the heart. And so it's a good thing to research, guys. But within the sacral chakra lies a connective element. For some of you guys, you'll even perceive it here today. It's like a thread or a cord or just a little link. It's just like this little linkage that connects to another template in the body. I believe in other cultures they call them the koshas, the energy body templates. We do have an emotional body template, and what we find is that within the sacral chakra, this is one of the first primary, just real direct connections with the emotional body template. And so what that means is that the condition of the sacral energy is very closely related with how we express our emotions, how we're taught to express emotions. It has a big relationship on the thought form programming of the root chakra, and it carries that thought form programming upward and allows it to mix and coalesce with the emotional expression and the intimacy program we will release. And with the emotional programming that we have, it begins to create or absorb the thought forms that will eventually become emotional issues, physical illnesses, even cycles of behavior, and yes, even sexual behavior. And so these are just things to be made aware of. Please, I do see your questions and comments there. There are no dumb questions about the sacral chakra. Don't feel embarrassed. If you're like, but Matthew, wait, hold on, wait. Don't feel bad. Excuse me. And so we do have some related diseases, or what we call maladies. I will say that, you know, I try not to be very hard and fast with it's always this, but we do find in many cases, if we have emotional issues surrounding sexuality or sexual dysfunction, that's often not tied but can still be tied to a physical issue in the body. A lot of the consciousness or emotional based issues will reside within the sacral chakra. Not all of it, but it has tremendous impact on how we experience or just allow sexual functioning of all kinds. And so it also has a big role with urinary issues, fertility issues, especially in women. That's a very commonly deactivated chakra. And if you were here last week, you'll know that I'm not one of those people that says, oh yes, we'll just remove that. We'll just take out this, you know, chakra removal, by my view, is not a thing. But deactivation is a thing. Just like you can turn off the lights in one of the rooms of your house and never turn them on. If you choose, you don't have to ever turn it on. It's going to be hard to see things in there, you know. But you guys sort of get where I'm going. I do a lot of metaphorical stuff. But yeah, the sacral chakra will be deactivated for some people. And as a result, some of us will experience menstrual issues for women, PMDD for women, histrionic or narcissistic personality disorders in both men and women can be caused by an overpressurization or a great excess of energy in the sacral chakra that is unable to transmit or move upward or downward, and it creates crazy impulse like control or lack of impulse control for men with blocked up sacral energy. And this is also root energy as well, men. Prostate disorders. Prostate will just pinch off at a certain stage of life. And for a lot of us men, it starts with emotional stuff and shame that we'll pick up and just hold in the body, and especially when it's sexual shame, or a lot of us will have unacknowledged sort of like sexual pressurization that we'll suppress in our lives. And so on a certain level, it mixes with energy in the sacral chakra and can lead to prostate disorders, lower back issues, sciatica for some of us. I guarantee you, as I'm talking about this, a few of us are going to feel little energies down there, and that is okay. That's your body just kind of acknowledging and sort of activating. And so also, you guys, addictions. Big addiction center, big holding ground for programming of addiction. There is an actual construct in the energy body known as addiction webbing. It is kind of like webbing, very, very much, or it will be perceived as webbing. You can think of it like kind of like an old dirty cobweb hanging out in the corner of the room that just picks up dust and dirt, and it'll even be holding little bits of dead insects that came in there. And yes, it's a strange metaphor I'm giving you guys, but there is actual non-physical addiction webbing that hangs out in the body, and it'll just hold on to junk, stuff, ideas, influences. In certain cases, it'll be very heavily affected by substances. And that creates great changes in our sexual behavior or influences or urges. And so for some of us, we will be deactivated there. We will lose all sexual pleasure, all intimate pleasure. We can experience anhedonia for some of us, which is the inability to feel pleasure. In some cases, it'll be pleasure of any kind, but most often it's pleasures, it's sensual pleasures, or what some people call carnal pleasures also. And so some of that will be due to psoas muscle trauma. Some of it will be due to thought forms, a lot of shame. If you're wondering what's the emotion, you guys, that will really suppress, what will truly suppress and just sort of beat down the sacral energy in the body. And I will say, I think it will affect men on a much more jagged level. And I say that obviously because I'm a male. Women will also have their own individual experience with this. But if you're wondering what is, in my opinion, what is the most damaging emotion to the sacral chakra? Shame. Shame. So hold on to that, let it fit wherever. Some of you guys, as soon as I said that, you're going to be brought back to an experience in early childhood or another stage in your life in which you were programmed with that feeling. And so it's your body kind of going, maybe it is, Matthew. But anyway, big effects on sexual behavior, intimacy of all kinds. And yet at the flip side, there's a lot, there's incredible positive energy there, and you're going to encounter people in this world that will be examples. Also in your own life, you will have moments in which things are very balanced, and you will express the energy of intimacy or emotional pressurization or internalized fire of desire and passion in a very healthy way, because people with this healthy sacral chakra energy, it's seen in people who are capable of experiencing close, intimate bonding. They actively seek their passions in appropriate ways. You're going to have experiences with people in your world that you're going to feel so closely related to. You're going to feel a connection on a different level. You will find that in certain presences and certain relationships, there will just be this ease of expression. In the third density energy body, most of us confuse that with, in certain cases, some form of a sexual vibe, and the human body gets confused by it. But what we're finding is in fourth density, the human body, we're sharing and sending and receiving energy on such a different level that in order to facilitate that, we have to begin to defeat the energy of shame in the body. And so for those of us that are able to create close bonds with appropriate levels of interaction, that's going to be you exercising and awakening your sacral energy in a way that allows you to transmit an intimate frequency. in a whole new way. And so we will be able to express the heights and the depths of our emotions or desires with ease and passion. You're going to find a lot of people that have really unbalanced sacral energy, and as soon as they get triggered, it's like this, you know, this crazy, like this fire just explodes. And for a lot of us, disregarding the emotion that comes out, it's this pressurization that begins in the sacral chakra. Not being able to discern or interpret or transmit an energy of passion, it'll begin to then create the most prevalent emotional reaction. And so we find that when sacral energy is very balanced, we express, we receive, we transmit, we allow intimacy, all of those things, excuse me, at a much more balanced level. And so the psychic sense, we do have to mention it there, because you guys are going to find in many writings and researchers are going to be like, well, yeah, there's these senses, these psychic abilities that kick in as we go through this process. They just activate, right? And it is actually 100% true. It's a natural state of human consciousness. I would say, you know, you guys can see it there on the screen. Most people regard the psychic sense associated with the sacral chakra as being clairgustance, the ability to taste, non-physical energy. I will tell you, it's this sense I get a lot. I believe it activated in me very early on. I don't think it really had to do that much with the sacral chakra for me, but I do want to mention it because there are people literally right now, and I will challenge some of you guys to do this, maybe even this evening after this clearing, if you live in a place where you're still able to go on an evening walk. For some of you guys, it'll be tomorrow or whenever you watch this. Start walking by people's houses, wherever you live, if you're capable, and start smelling and tasting. Notice what you pick up. I guarantee you, some of you guys are going to have this experience where you will get this smell or this taste in your body upon encountering another person's energy, and that's going to have a whole story attached to it. It's going to have an experience, an emotion, a feeling, an event, all those things. Now, on a certain level, I believe it is an activation of the sacral chakra, allowing you to perceive some of that energy differently. But I think it will also transmit or be expressed differently, because I think what we will find is on a more common level, when the sacral chakra energy begins to activate and we sort of kick into the fourth density ability, I believe that we will experience this in a very healthy cultivation and magnetization of our intimate energy, meaning that people will be drawn to us. We'll have a healthy cultivation and expression of those energies. And so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I think it shows up a little bit differently for everyone. I know I just dropped a bunch of information on you. Let me grab your comments here if I can make my comment window open. Sean Beebe says, do you ever get the metal, tangy, tinge taste in your mouth? Absolutely, 100%. That's also going to tell you a very important thing. Your body's detoxing. Certain people are going to get it after these energy clearings that we're doing here. I get it constantly after I work with client Sean. That is an element, number one, of clairgustance activating in the body, because you're going to start to tie a feeling, an emotion, a person, an event, even a toxin to whatever that is. We are also experiencing is your body's enhanced level of detoxing and releasing energy. And so the reality is you've been doing that your entire life through the mouth, but only now we are now beginning to experience or perceive that energy differently. Some of you guys are also going to notice that your tongue is going to look differently. Some of you guys are going to notice your body odor has changed just in the past couple months, believe it or not. And Karen Parker says, I've been not able to taste in 3 years. I feel you on that. That is also a thing that occurs. You can just begin doing research on a couple of the meridians in the body. Karen Parker, especially the points on the head surrounding what I believe for you may be triple heater meridian, stomach meridian, and spleen meridian. If you want to look up those things, they will have an important impact on how our body receives, transmits, allows, and absorbs the energy of taste. There's also, I cannot remember the exact cranial nerve, but there's a cranial nerve that extends out of the back of your head that also has a big impact on the perceptual abilities of the tongue. I kind of want to say it's a hypoglossal nerve, but someone out there in this group will know and they'll be like, Matthew, that's not it. You guys will have to Google that on your own. But there are structural elements in your body that will respond or also will have an impact on the sense. Yes, there's also the olfactory bulb. in the head as well that has a big impact on this. And so another way that you can improve that for yourself, Karen Parker, is through heavy metal detox, which is something we talked about in week 1. I hope that if you can, please do that. Yes, Jenny Scone, we see you. Thank you. Yes, Freddie Fleming, that's a real thing. The psoas, very important. So Jenny Scone says, so people with problems with iliopsoas muscles might have problems with sacral chakra. They are both interrelated, but they are not necessarily guaranteed. You may have a structural situation in the iliopsoas or anything around that area that might not necessarily be related to emotion, but what we find is people that will have long-lasting dysfunction or emotional issues surrounding intimacy, expression of intimacy, all of those things, a lot of that has to do with that. We're going to talk more about the psoas in the next few moments here, so thank you. Oh, cool, you're waiting for the herbs to come in. Karen Parker, I have a feeling, and you may have big emotions on that detox, but I have this crazy feeling it's going to have an impact on your taste of, or your sense of taste and smell. Very important. But we've been going on and on about the psoas. We got to talk about it. Some of you guys will kind of remember, or you might have seen some of the videos I did on YouTube. I've talked about the psoas before. I've used this slide before. Some of you guys will see I like to recycle some of the images and information because it allows me to kind of ping off of the information that allowed me to originally create it. And one of the things I've learned about myself very early on in this journey was that I had a tremendous amount of energy wrapped up in this part of my body. A lot of old emotion, a lot of childhood stuff, just a lot of deep things that were sort of lodged in the body like a towel that had been kind of twisted up. And what I began to understand early on is that the psoas muscle, from a basic perspective, you guys, it's basically the muscle that connects your legs to your spine. If you're one of the people here that's like, well, this is the first time I'm hearing of this, Matthew, I feel something there, it might have something to do with what we're doing here, but it's very important because this is essentially what's holding your legs on your, it's not the only thing, but it's the muscle that pulls everything together down there in the groin, down there in your hips and your legs, down at the base of your spine. And to put it very simply, it acts as a cellular recording device. To make it more metaphorical, you guys, it's kind of like a disk drive. I know that's a weird image for some of you guys, but it is. It's like this disk drive in your body. It's this hard drive, and it's going to be holding on to unexpressed energy, unexpressed emotions. Most of the time, not always, it will hold on to unresolved emotional and physical and sexual trauma. Things that occur sometimes in past lives, because here's the thing, not everyone in this physical body here on the earth plane experienced this type of trauma in their life cycle. Some people will be like, Matthew, I have all kinds of issues with the psoas, but I did not have that trauma, and that's okay, because it's not always tied to specific trauma that we experience in this physical life. What we're finding with the fourth density shift is that it is also related to past life, or what we could even call concurrent lifetimes that we are also experiencing on another dimensional plane. And what we find is that in the psoas muscle alone, there's a tremendous amount of stored energy. Some people call it the emotional core, or one of the emotional cores, due to its direct connectivity with the energy processed in the lower 3 chakras, with particular emphasis. I would even say possibly the most emphasis in terms of the lower 3 chakras, in terms of behavioral influence. A lot of that will come, will be related to energy that's stored within the sacral chakra and the psoas. And so our sacral chakra holds, as we know now, the fire of our creative and sexual energy, and it's one of the most fertile environments for negative energetic manifestations, like we just said, from unresolved trauma. This can also be very common location for sexual misery implantation, holographic trauma inserts, victimizer technology, etc. And also, like I mentioned earlier, siphon points for parasitic energies or entities, or just anything existing on the astral plane that may have a vested interest in harvesting human emotional or sexual energy. And so the way that is done from a very, very basic perspective. Some of you guys will know that I tend to oversimplify a lot of these things for the sake of making it understandable. But one of the ways you can imagine that, and some of you guys have heard me talk about this before, is through the path of awakening and transformation in the human body on the non-physical astral planes. For some of us at certain stages, it's kind of like we become this very large bonfire in a very dark forest, and certain things will be drawn. They'll see this, and you know, like you can even imagine if you're wandering around in this dark forest or this lower astral realm, and you're able to perceive the energy of sentient beings on the third density plane. A lot of them will experience, it's almost like this bright light, and you'll notice the way moths or insects will be drawn to that bright light. They'll sort of hover around it, and in many cases they'll get close to it and they'll sort of burn up in the flame. A very important visual representation for what we're doing here today. We're going to be burning away certain things, but they will also be attracted to that energy. And what we find is this is one of the places in which implantation does very, very commonly occur. And there is an ability or an occurrence in which trauma that's not even yours can almost be uploaded, or rather downloaded, into the human body, so that your own energy centers will go through the process of creating this frequency. It's almost like we're going to put this disk drive in the hard drive here, and we're going to start to, you know, we're going to start a program, and that program will be artificially induced trauma responses, or artificially induced emotions, or in certain cases artificially induced sexual impulses that will be coming from actual physical places in the body. It doesn't mean that they're yours, but what it means is that the psoas muscle is one of the places in which that energy will be held and stored and then released at certain times. And so for those of you guys who have heard me talk about the psoas before, some of us will go through things like yin yoga, or they'll begin to open the pelvic floor. They'll do a thing called trauma release exercises, and we'll begin to go through these spasms and these emotional releases in the body. And what that is the psoas muscle finally going, and everything begins to sort of shake out. You get down to the bottom of the jar and things start to roll out. And for some people, you guys, it can be very difficult because there's things stored in there. For some of us, they're very, very hard to look at, very, very hard to feel, very, very hard to acknowledge. And so when we go through process of true healing, the psoas muscle is very, very important, because it's one of the things that will keep us stuck. On a physical level, you guys, it will also create a lot of issues, and we will find people with physical tightening. There are a whole bunch of things. Let's just look at them here, because when emotions, trauma, or parasitic energy of any type affects the psoas muscle, we can experience problems, here we go, with sexual functioning, also related to the sacral chakra. It also tells you where the psoas energy is affecting based on the dysfunction in the physical body. Many people will experience extreme constipation. Yes, it is totally related to the psoas muscle, because what it does is it creates a tightening, a closing off, a pinching. Sometimes it'll be even non-physical. It'll create this just solidity. It'll be like a non-physical clenched fist that's just always there. And I've encountered certain clients where it's like they will have literally this closure down near the anal opening, or in certain cases it'll be women, they'll have this inappropriate tightening of the vaginal areas in the body. And so one of the things we're beginning to understand is that will also have a relationship with the energy stored in the psoas, the iliopsoas, whatever you want to call it. And so it also shows up as anhedonia, an ability to feel pleasure. That's also a sign that the sacral chakra has been deactivated. And I know that, you know, deactivation is kind of a weighty term. The energy will just be routed around, you know, like a rock in the stream. They just go around, still there, still could work, but nothing's happening. And so we will also experience dryness, tightness, erectile dysfunction. Yes, men, we get prostatitis. I had a very, very early occurrence of prostatitis in my late 20s and early 30s. I believe it was directly related to extreme sacral blockage for me. I had a tremendous amount of sexual shame just forced on me at an earlier stage of my life. And I think for me, as a male, that began to manifest in very, very early stage prostate issues. I can tell you that, you know, after I began to go through processes of clearing, that stuff literally bounced. It was as if it just went when this energy center was addressed in my body, and it's amazing the level to which the sacral chakra will somehow have this crazy physical impact on the body. And so I know we're going on and on about a lot of this stuff, guys, but it's very important because the emotions or the frequencies contained within the chakras, it's not just about the sort of psychosocial development. It's not just about the ascension elements. It's not just even about the physicality of something like the Psoas. It's about the accumulation of the experience and the energy and the frequency that comes together in all of those areas. And so as we're unpacking chakras, it's important to understand the Psoas, because some of you guys are going to be like, well, Matthew, I thought this was chakra class, man. What? I thought we're supposed to talk about energy centers and we're spending all this time on the Psoas, but they have everything to do with each other, because this is where the physical energy from the non-physical energy centers starts to show up. And so some of you guys already know this and you're like, yeah, man, we get it. We know what it is, but it's very important also for the awakening of intuition. And I will tell you, week 3 is big intuitive activation. A huge one as we get to the solar plexus and spleen. But it's very important, you guys, because this will affect the vagus nerve, especially what goes on down in the psoas, down in the gut. It has a big impact on the vagus nerve, that second and third, yes, I said them, second and third brains in the body, the gut-brain balance, emotional discernment. If the psoas muscle, if the sacral energy is all twisted up, we have a very, very hard time gauging the sort of influential, impulsive, intimate energies we experience in the world. We'll sort of perceive them differently. It gets all twisted around, and in certain cases we'll encounter an individual in the world and we'll misperceive the frequency or the emotional interaction, and we'll think of it as a threat. In other cases we will perceive energy that is threatening, and because of the energetic frequency in the psoas or the sacral chakra, we will interpret it as something appropriate. Once again, an example of, you know, how our body interprets the emotional pH value. It has everything to do with what we're drawing in, magnetizing and attracting. And so it's a highly, highly complex chakra. You guys can probably tell. That's why we're going on and on about it. But the psoas is probably one of the easiest places in which we're going to gauge the level to which we have deep implanted or dormant physicalized energy from the sacral made physical. And so it's not the only place, but we just need to be made aware of it. And so for those able and willing to begin a process of trauma release exercises, yin yoga, like I said earlier, or any body work that essentially can help open up the pelvic floor muscles, it's going to be possible for many, many people to literally reverse. They will fade away. This is like a big pressurized bubble of trauma energy, and there are also people who will have a very hard time expressing emotions in the body. They'll try to tune in, they'll try to tap in with certain things, and they'll come to a place where as soon as they start to feel it, this thing goes and it deactivates. It's like this little switch goes nope, and we check out. That will also be held with, or it's rather a sign, it's also a sign of other things, but it can be a sign that we have a trapped, pressurized energy within the psoas muscle that will be affecting how we perceive, how we release, how we translate emotions in the body. And so for those of you guys, you can even just Google TRE online, just Google trauma release exercises, and you're going to find a million videos on it. The basic idea is that we overexhaust the muscles in the psoas and the legs, and it creates this tremor, and the body starts to just let all this stuff out. Some of you guys have experienced it before, but very important. Today we're going to be planting a seed in the psoas and kind of beginning the softening of that energy. And so while results will differ based on your own individual makeup, the psoas muscle is one of the biggest players in physical, emotional, energetic health and connectivity of how we use, process, and send sacral energy. And once again, sacral energy, it's emotional, it's passionate, it's sexual, it's intimate, and it's not any one of all of those things. It's all of that energy combined within the body and how we, express it. And so, yes, I see your comments. Thank you. Let's talk about it. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I know there's a delay. I'm trying to get my comment window to open here, guys. I have to flail my mouse wildly in order for it to show up. Thank you, thank you. I see your comments here. Thank you, thank you. I'm just kind of reading over everything. Good job, guys. Thank you, thank you. And so Diana had a question. I think that didn't come through in the group chat. But she does talk about how she had a clairgustance experience with the root chakra last week, which is really, really good sign. I believe that, you know, the reason why they list and the reason why people have experienced those senses or those awakenings of psychic senses is because that is an absolute, literal example. And so I think that you will experience that maybe with another chakra. You may experience it, another sense with another chakra. I don't think, Diana, that they're necessarily tied specifically to one energy center. And, you know, for me, I experience those sense just kind of, or those experiences, those senses, those cities, whatever you want to call it, clairgustance, clairalience. I experience the activation of those entirely outside of any chakra work that I was doing. It was like a weird switch that flicked on in my body. And so for each of you guys, it's going to be a little bit of a different process. I guarantee it. Some of you guys are going to have a wild and crazy sacral chakra activation here just this afternoon, and you're not going to notice any taste. You're not going to notice any smell. You're going to feel it entirely differently. Some of you guys, like Diana said, you know, maybe you did the root chakra thing and, you know, you've experienced a whole different sensual activation. And so for each of us, it's entirely individual. And so Audrey says, as we talk about the sacral chakra, I can see mine as this like galaxy looking energy disc, and it's spinning like crazy and wobbling all over the place. That is a very, very good example when we start to tune in the internalized space, especially when we're in a group like this, you guys. And I know we're just talking and we're looking at stuff, but a lot of you guys are experiencing and feeling these internal, these cues, these sort of even internalized conversations that you're having with yourself while I'm talking, wondering about certain events and things and experiences. And that is a phenomenon of multidimensional energy working in your life. Sarah says, tantric linga massage is a good practice for prostatitis. Absolutely, it totally is. Helps move and just, you know, we could say dissipate, transmit, route energy through that area. Definitely real. In my case, it was also related to what we call some of the maladies of the star seeds, you guys, and that I came in one of those beings that was very, very anxious, very, very, you know, emotionally damaged, and I had to be on a lot of meds. I was on a lot of like, you know, psychiatric like medications at an earlier stage of my life. Come to find out, it was just because I was an empath, because my body was absorbing and holding on to energy in a different level. And what I experienced very early on was just incredible. It was like this dense buildup of all of these energies in my body. And the sacral chakra was a really big one of them. My heart, like up in the chest and the lungs, was where I was carrying stuff for years. I mean, years. Amazing the way that works. And so, yes, thank you. Thank you guys. Good comments. A lot of the individuals in this world that will go through experiences early on as children, and they're like, well, you've got this emotional issue, you've got this, you know, anxiety thing. A lot of that, you know, for some of us as parents, it's literally the multidimensional senses or the intuitive or empathic abilities that will just activate at different stages of our life. And unless we're aware of them or unless we're capable of discerning those, they will literally show up as a mental issue or an emotional disorder. And the reason why I'm going on and on about that is because the psoas muscle in and of itself will hold. It just holds it down there. And so just important to be made aware of. Astrid says TRE is awesome. Also yin yoga. Thank you. Extra tips you might write about hypopressive exercise. Thank you. I'm actually not familiar with that term. I'm interested in learning more. Thank you, Astrid. Strengthening of the glutes and hamstrings. Very, very good. I appreciate that. Thank you for the info. We are going to move on. There's a lot more, guys. I know we've been going on and on about stuff. There's many energy systems in the body. All kinds of wild things, systems and circulatory elements and all kinds of stuff. And I would say probably one of the most ancient or it has been referred to in the Vedas and the, cultural scripts and all of this documentation for thousands and thousands of years. And one of the oldest and I would say most studied and also most misunderstood and also most, I would say, overcomplicated is the natal complex, or the nadis. And so for some of you guys, you're like, yeah, Matthew, we know about this. For other people, maybe this is the first time you've ever heard of the chakra zone circulatory system. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this today because I believe that the natal complex is most easily interacted with through other methods, indirect methods, working with meridians, chakras, moving consciousness energy. It is also something that we have to be made aware of, but many of us will go through our entire life working with energy and just never really work with the nadis. We will not really come to any specific understanding or interaction with them, yet we will be interacting with them in literally every session. So let's just talk about it. It's going to take a little bit of a different form for each of you, but along with the meridians, the chakras, the natal complex is one of the primary elements of what many call the subtle body, which is just, a generalized term referring to the networks of non-physical energetic pathways that we have in the human body. And the natal complex, like we said, is essentially the chakra's circulatory system. In ancient texts and teachings, some cultural models describe, over 72,000 nadis. You can think of them like little strings of energy connecting and transmitting prana, chi, kundalini through the chakras. Very similar to the meridians as well. But up to 72,000 nadis that supply and route energy through and upwards of 144 chakras, or in certain cases, certain texts, certain cultural backgrounds will say, well, there actually could be 350,000 nadis or even more. And I will tell you, for those of you guys that study kind of the cultural implications, relationships, and understandings, just what we've been unpacking about non-physical energy centers in the body, it is my belief, and this is kind of a weird thing to say here because some of you guys will be instantly confused, is that no matter who looks at it, no matter who it is that's able to accurately or maybe even not so accurately view the layers of the human energy body, the closer you look, the more you will find. The more closer we zoom in on the non-physical energetic layers of the body, we're going to find more and more. And so it is my personal belief that there is an absolutely infinite number of energetic pathways in the body. And so the natal complex is, widely regarded as the chakra's circulatory system. But primarily because it seems to interact with what I believe is, I think it's 11 primary nadis. There might be more. My terminology and, official study of this is limited. But I think what we need to be made aware of today is the 3 primary nadis, because you guys are going to hear of them referred to. You're going to read about them in text. You're going to read about them in blogs. You're going to go to workshops and classes, and people are going to talk about these passageways. And at the very least, it's really good to just have a generalized understanding of where these things connect and what they do. And so it's most widely regarded that what I would call the primary, or the most important, or the most widely kind of regarded or understood, accepted nadi is called the Sushumna. I also regard this as being the governing vessel. Just so you know, it's also a meridian, it's also the spinal column, it's also all of those things together, but it's the primary supply line for the natal complex, rising up from the root chakra and extending all the way up to the crown chakra. The Sushumna is responsible for sending kundalini energy upward through the chakras and nadis in a twisting spiral, moving upward, an upward twisting spiral motion. I have observed this in my own work, like I just said, as an aspect of the governing vessel meridian, one of the primary central channels moving energy up the back and ultimately down the front of the body where it connects. And I'm already going to start by saying, for those of you guys that are looking at this image here, there's actually, in my opinion, a little bit of a misconception. I'm going to bring my mouse pointer right here to the base of this image, this strange guy's nose here. You guys can hopefully see it on the screen. I believe that probably one of the most important connection points for the upward movement of the the energy passing through the Sushumna and the Nadial complex actually coalesces, not necessarily up here in the pineal, although it does move up right here, right at the base of the nostrils, right at your upper lip, right around this area right here. And the reason for that being is because that's the connection point between the central channel meridians, the governing vessel, which goes up the back. It starts down in the perineum and extends up your spinal column all the way down right here to this little spot right there. That's also where the Ida and the Pingala, which you can see right there on the screen, we'll talk about them officially in just a second, that's where these two secondary nadis coalesce and connect and terminate right here, right at the base right here. And then what they do is they begin to move upward and sort of twist and go in another direction. But the reason why that area is important from an energetic perspective is it also has a big relationship with the stomach meridian right there. We have a urinary bladder meridian connection in that area. We also have a gallbladder meridian connection in that area. And the reason why I'm diverting into the meridians in chakra class is because they will also have a tremendous impact on how the chakra system's energy moves. And so what we find with the Sushumna, the reason why we need to be made aware of it here today is because it is the central processing supply line channel for the chakra energy in your body, also known as prana, also known as chi, also known as kundalini. And here's the thing, those are also kind of a little bit separate substances in and of themselves, which is a weird can of worms as well. But why we need to be made aware of the Sushumna is because it is the supply line for that chakra-based circulatory energy. And so, along with that, we have the feminine archetype or the feminine element. It's called the Ida. And as one of the primary three nadis, the Ida is considered the feminine channel. It's feminine in nature. It carries the energy of the moon. The Ida originates on the left side of the Sushumna, also left side of the body. For most of you guys that know, it is widely regarded as the female or the divine feminine side of the body. And so the Ida connects right there on the left side, the left side of the Sushumna, and then weaves its way upward where it connects with the Pingala. That's the male aspect right there, right here. They sort of collect and sort of channel their energy right there together. And so just very, very important for the clean routing and supplying of energy in the body. And so also, along with that, like I just mentioned, the male aspect is called the Pingala. It's on the right side of the body, and it weaves its way upward, terminating on the right side of the nostril. And so some of you guys are familiar with pranic breathing. You've also heard of pranic healing, which is an additional modality. Believe it or not, we're going to be discussing next week, I believe, in our solar plexus chakra work. But some of you guys have heard of the sort of pranic breathing practice by which you will be pulling energy specifically up through those three primary nadis. And you guys can do it with me if you like here, just on the spot. What you'll do is you just close one nostril. Doesn't matter. We can start on the right. Pinch off your right nostril, just real gently here in the moment, and what you're going to do is take a breath in from the left. All the way in, and then exhale from the left nostril. All the way down. Some of you guys are going to, like you'll blow some snots out of your nose like I almost did, and then you immediately switch over. A lot of people will just switch their finger, and then you move your other finger over to the left side and take a breath and a release solely from the right side. And so there's much more measured and distinct techniques toward moving this sort of breath from side to side, from one side to the other. But the idea is by circulating breath through one side or the other, what we're doing is we're beginning to consciously pull the energy of the Ida and the Pingala upward. And that's not to say that's the only way to do it. There are many other ways. There's a practice that I use in some of my clearings where I will literally pull the energy upward. There's many ways in which we can do that. But right now, you guys, breath and the vibration of sound in the body is one of the easiest ways to transmit that energy. And so, as you can see on the text here on the screen, each of these channels, both the right and the left, the male and the female, will also correspond with the parasympathetic nervous system and also the sympathetic. That's the differences between the automatic nervous system functions and the more conscious nervous system functions. And so each of these will also pertain to, anatomy in the body. But essentially what we're talking about is both the male and female aspects of the transmission of chakra-based consciousness energy in the body. Some of you guys are going, huh? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And for some of you guys, it'll just sort of, come in and out. But it's very important that we're aware of just the additional layers of structure in the body. Thank you for your comments. We'll check that stuff out. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Every atom, there's a black hole at the center that connects to every other atom in the universe. Absolutely. And yes, Jenny Scone, you're totally right. The sides flip based on what model you look at. Here's the cool thing about that. You guys will find when we start moving into just your own energy work, and those of you guys that are practitioners as well and sort of unpacking the many healing modalities in the world, you guys are going to find that those right sides flip on an individual basis. And you're going to encounter individuals in this world who the right side of their body is quite literally the female side, and the other side will be the masculine. One of the things I learned very, very early on is that there's absolutely always an exception. In fact, as soon as we allow for the opening of those exceptions, we realize that it's different each and every time. I will say, in generality, when I'm encountering in my own energy work, I do tend to find the male aspect on the right side, very interestingly. However, we will also find a transmission of yin energy moving in either upward or a downward motion on the right or the left. Also, once again, based on the most prevalent sort of gender-specific frequency in the body. So I guess what I'm saying in a very roundabout way, Jenny, and you might have found this in your own work, is that we will also flip-flop during the course of the lifetime, in which at a certain stage the right side will go over here, or the male side will go to this side. Is a very, very interesting interchangeability that we find. And so I hope that makes sense. It gets very, very complex, and sometimes I worry that we're going to confuse people. Jenny says, yeah, it totally depends on which theory you use. Absolutely. The cool thing is they're all equally viable. Audrey says, if you have more trouble breathing in with one side, does it mean you might be out of balance on one side? It can. It can also be that you will, just have kind of a blockage in your nasal passage, and you might have a hard time breathing. But I would say if the thought even comes in, there will be some element of something there for you to look at. Not necessarily saying that because we may have an issue breathing or differentiating the movement and breath on each side that there's an inherent energy blockage, but it could be indicative of that. It's one of those things in which we're going to have to kind of lean into your own understanding. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. One of the things you're going to find, and a lot of you guys are already discovering this on your own, is that each and every modality is equally viable in the energy of the moment, and a lot of them will also be equally contradictory in the energy of the moment based on the previously established, learnings and like whatnot. I think, the best thing that I can do at this stage is literally revise and change and update on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's keep moving, y'all, because we're about to take a break. We're going to talk about some very interesting things, and we are going to be doing a really, really cool energy clearing today, and we're right about there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and this time is a little bit different than week one, because we're gonna set a timer for about six or 7 minutes. What I'd like you guys to do, if you can, it's very important. A lot of us have just been sitting here for the last almost 2 hours, and I'd like you to kind of walk around a little bit, maybe go to the bathroom. If once again, if you can grab some water or juice or coffee or tea, whatever it is, if you can just very gently kind of bend over, stretch your pelvic muscles in whatever way you feel guided to. What we want to do is just kind of create a little bit of looseness in the energy body, because what we're going to be doing is just working with some new stuff, some new frequencies. Also, please put your comments, put your questions. Once again, no dumb questions. If you've been hearing all this wild stuff I've been dumping on you here today, you might have some questions. Certain things will be unclear. There's going to be a lot of things during this course that they will literally contradict your own internalized understanding. The idea is that we're taking what fits and we are throwing the rest out. So, please put your comments in the chat. I'm going to set a little timer here in the moment. Yes. Thank you. We're going to get to that in a second, Jenny. I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer, guys. We're going to do a timer for 6 minutes. Make your way on back. Let's find your questions or comments. I have a feeling other people are going to have that as well. Very, very distinct energy release in the throat as we're getting started. So thank you for your questions, everybody. You can start kind of filing on back in the room. Yes, the 3 treasures. Thank you. Right nostril to increase warmth. Left nostril breathing can increase cold. Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. All right, so come on in, everyone. We're going to go ahead and begin here. If you have your water. Oof, okay. So the idea about this clearing here today is that what we're basically doing is helping to restructure some of the more deeper or dormant frequencies in our body surrounding how we're experiencing, translating, and using the energy of intimacy. And a lot of us, will experience this as a shifting, or in some cases an awakening, in some cases a resurgence or an activation of passion and energy in the body. And so I'm going to start out today by saying that for some of us here, we may experience kind of a reawakening of some of the sexual urges in your body. And for some of you guys during this meditation here today, you may even feel a little bit of that energy. And for some of us, it could be a little bit uncomfortable in the sense that we will have an emotion or a filter in the body that may cause us to either feel afraid, or in some cases, usually it'll cause us to feel ashamed, as if it's something that we shouldn't. It's this feeling that's like, oh, you can't, no, that's not a thing, that's not appropriate. And what I would like to do today is start out this section by kind of differentiating that sort of feeling for a lot of us, because what we're going to be experiencing in the coming years is a change in the sensations, a change in the ways our bodies and our emotions will sort of interpret and allow the way our bodies perceive non-physical energy. And so when we begin to really work with the sacral chakra, and some of you guys that have done your own healing work will have also encountered an emotion or a feeling or a program down in that area very, very early on. Almost for a lot of us, it'll even begin as soon as someone or even ourselves starts talking about those sensations. So if you're one of the people here that felt a little bit of a thing as soon as we say things like, well, in the sacral chakra there's sexual arousal, each of us will have a little thing wherever it is. And so we just simply acknowledge those, and we understand that we're here today to improve and assist in the activation of the healthy and appropriate ways in which each and every one of us is going to be using that energy in our own missions, in our own healing work, in whatever it is. It's almost like we're cleaning up and relighting that frequency in the body. And so that's also why we use the image on the perceptual frequency of the blue flame. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, if you start Googling the blue flame or the keepers of the blue flame, you're going to find a few things. Most of them are kind of copied and pasted from a few sources that are all repeating kind of the same thing. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think each and every person is going to have their own interpretation of it. But I'm going to tell you about my experience with the blue flame. And this was directly after Dimensions of Disclosure, a conference here on the west coast of the United States in 2019. So this was just last year. And shortly after this conference, after I came home, I was just doing Qigong in my living room, getting ready to see a client, just getting back into the stream of things. And as I was doing Qigong, I bent down to touch the earth, doing this Qigong stance known as carrying the moon, in case anyone wants to look that up. And as I put my hands down toward the earth, it was as if my hands went into water. It was as if my hands were in this invisible liquid. And it was so distinct that I just kind of sat there for a moment and sort of moved my hands around in this sort of invisible energy down near my feet. And it felt as if I was kind of just circulating my hands through this stream of water that was running, you know, either across my feet or in between my legs or whatever it was. And in the internal realm, as I perceived that energy, it showed up very much like the photoluminescent waves that one will see on the beach at certain periods, in which there's almost an electric blue sheen that seems to cascade across the surface of the water as it's, you know, disturbed and moved and circulated with your hands. And as I sort of moved this perceptual energetic liquid underneath me, it was as if there was blue waves and sort of blue energy. And I began to hear or feel, experience in my body a message or an understanding or an acknowledgement that told me we were the keepers of the blue flame, the holders of the blue flame. I was told and experienced at that moment that it was a sacred gift, and it was an element of activation. And what I was shown, like you can see here on the screen, a process by which in another lifetime or another realm, we went through a blue flame activation through which we were perceiving and meditating with a blue flame lying in a dish at the base of a pyramid. And that dish was water, a liquid. And as we would meditate and tone or create a vibration in the body, our energy would ignite a blue flame in this dish of water. And the frequency of that blue flame was actually the base of the 7 primordial flames that began to move upward and eventually they will be perceived through other colors. There's actually 7 of them. But the blue flame, by my understanding and in Matthew's own experience, was the primary activation of those divine 7 flames in the body. And so what we're doing here today is we're beginning the ignition process in the sacral chakra, where I experienced that activation of energy. And so at the time, during that experience, what I was shown was that one of the ways in which we would encounter the blue flame was in other people, and it was in their perceptions and their abilities and their decisions to align with the frequency of truth. And so it seems there is also some sort of a relationship with, you know, also the throat chakra as well, oftentimes holding the color blue, and the level to which we as beings are able to activate divine will and our ability to then begin broadcasting the frequency of truth. And so the blue flame, at least in its form here today, is an energetic frequency that we're going to be using to activate your energy centers on a new level. The direct influence, or my understanding, the impact that that has on one, is a further discernment and a clarification of how you can use your passions, how you can begin channeling or diverting the passionate energy in your life toward your own understandings, your own mission, your own healing. It's like it's lighting a new fire inside the body. And so it also creates a template or a holding point for the manifestation of the additional flames in the body. And so I think somebody had posted on Facebook, it was like a violet flame, which is also an absolutely legitimate frequency of multidimensional energy. I think the violet flame is very, very easily perceived for many, many people on the earth plane right now, because it is something that tends to manifest more easily through very, very catalyzed emotions, or the transmutation of highly polarized emotions. And I think the violet flame is something that people are able to harness on a level, even though they might not have the actual divine template flame kind of thing set up in the body, they'll still be able to use and interact with the violet flame wavelength, just because I think it's easily accessed by human consciousness. That said, what we're doing is we're internalizing that frequency base and allowing your human body to then begin creating and transmitting that energy out through yourself, meaning that on a certain level, we could say that, you know, upon truly activating this flame frequency in the body, it's not so much that you're encountering that frequency out in the world, you're actually beginning to emit it. You're transmitting it from yourself. And so what that'll do, or what I've observed, that the effect that happens in my life, is that begins to draw certain people into your life, certain experiences. It will also cause you to suddenly kind of like, It's like you get these waves of inspiration. You begin to have these ideas or this sort of sudden, like, you know, I think maybe I should just suddenly, all of a sudden, I just kind of want to start, you know, like whatever. It's like we'll suddenly get these, like, it's like this opening moves in and we're like, you know, I could just, and for a lot of us, that's that flame ignition or this sort of the conscious transmission or the putting to use of whatever this frequency wavelength in our body is. And it's very, very important for those of us that have been called to this soul group, because if you're here, if you've made it to this long rant in this crazy class, it's my opinion because you have a role to play in this awakening process. You are one of those passive or active receivers and transmitters of multidimensional energy. So our mission here today is to ignite that template within your body. And so we will be participating in a very unique process of lighting the blue flame within each of us for the purpose of activating the next stage of unfoldment of your divine plan. And yes, feel free to put some questions in there before we get started. I know I'm talking a lot about what we're doing and we haven't started doing it yet, but this process is also known as linking the flame. I think that's very important. For some reason, I was just called to you know, define it in that sense. And so, you know, I'm going to honor that. And this will take in an individual form for each of us, depending on your unique makeup, your unique frequency, your chosen mission parameters. There's some people here today, this is the first time you've ever done a real energy clearing, and you're going to be like, what am I doing? Where am I going? How am I supposed to do this, Matthew? That's perfectly okay. What happens is with true multidimensional energy is that your body's going to receive it regardless, because you're here, because you chose to take a part in this process. Even if you are unable to discern what it does or how it works or where to put it or what to do with it, the non-physical element of you and the higher self and your guides are going to begin putting that energy to work in a way that's going to be specific to each of us. Because like I said at the start, some of us are here to heal, some of us are here to activate, some of us are here to pick up literally one little piece of something that then we just take that and boom, and we run off in a whole other direction to do a whole other process. Everyone's mission here is a little bit different, but the idea here today is that we're getting you closer. We're lighting a flame inside the body and helping to burn, you know, burn away impurities, miasmatic energy especially. And I have to say this here once again, you guys, the most damaging emotion to the sacral chakra and the true expression of your intimacy and the fire and the passion within you, intimacy of all forms, one of the biggest dampeners, the killers of that is shame. Shame. And the level to which we allow ourselves to be suppressed, to you know, be made to feel smaller, or the level to which we felt unwanted, in certain cases undesirable. And so as we go through this process, some of you guys are going to be feeling and also experiencing those moments in your world where maybe, you know, you get a little bit of that. We will watch it go by. It's like we're flushing old energy down the drain. And so let's talk about how we're going to do that. Let me know if you have any questions. I am unable to see my question thing in the moment. Thank you, thank you. But how are we going to be doing that? How are we going to go through this process? Well, number one, just like we did in week one, you guys will find in the energy work that I do, we tend to have pre-designed openings in the energy body that will allow us to begin moving non-physical energy through. It's like this opening that we create in the beginning. And so at the start of these energy clearings, and each week we're going to be beginning with a very simple crown chakra depressurization and opening process. I use a mantra during that. There's no need for you guys to follow me, but if you guys are interested, I can also post that online if you guys want to follow me in the opening mantra later on. But what we're going to be doing is starting out a little bit of an opening in the crown chakra. We're going to be moving that energy downward. And when we reach the sacral chakra, what we're going to be doing is using the root tone Vang with a G at the end. And for those of you guys that are going to be doing the toning with us, please do follow us. Don't worry about your tone. Don't worry about the sound. You can try to follow me as well, but don't worry if you can't. The idea is that we're simply creating a vibration. And if you don't want to follow me, please feel no shame. You can also be here to receive. But one of the other missions of this course, for those of you guys who haven't figured it out yet, is we're also teaching you how to do energy healing. So if you want to start using these tools, please do. You can tone right along with me. And just allow any emotions, really allow, because a lot of you guys, as soon as we get right down into the sacral chakra, it takes us a little while. We're going to go down a little staircase and open up some valves and little doors in the body, and we're going to move on down into that sacral chakra. And oftentimes, as soon as we get down in there and we start to open up energy centers in the body, just like we did last week, there might be some old experiences, there might be some old emotions, just some old feelings down in there. And I want you to be very, very free with your emotions here today. Allow whatever it is that needs to come out, especially if we get tears, or especially, I like to say this in the beginning, especially for those of you who may be sitting there just wondering, am I doing this right? How are we supposed to do this? Well, I'm not necessarily feeling anything. I'm just kind of, wondering. If you're one of those people, take heart. That is normal, and it's part of the process. It doesn't happen to everyone. But what we are here to do today is receive and allow a process of change. So we just complete allowance for whatever's going on in the body. And so we'll be moving down toward the sacral chakra using the root word Vong. After that, we will begin to reprogram and ignite the blue flame in the body using a capsule phrase. It was introed in week 1. These are vibratory sound complexes through which we can create a highly enhanced wavelength of energy. It's kind of like a giant capsule of energy that we are just allowing to be opened up within us, around us. We can send it into another person. And so today we're going to be using a new phrase. A new phrase. This is a capsule phrase, 3 syllables. I'm going to model it for you here before we begin. So just let this vibrate or reach your body in whatever way you're capable. It's kind of like we're setting up your template. And so allow this vibration to reach you in whatever way you're capable. You can see it down there on the screen. Here we go. Yavura. And so the basis of this vibratory complex is kind of like the way a vibration vibrates on a body of water, and it creates concentric rings that cascade outward. And so when we use these capsule phrases, for those of you guys who are going to, whether you're joining us or you're allowing the receipt of that, what we're doing is we're sending, it's like a tube of energy, this wavelength. It's all contained within this vibratory sound complex. And if you guys have heard me talk about it before, you don't actually have to create the sound in order for the energy to be created. But in the human body, it is one of the most effective sort of what I call training wheels toward the creation of a non-physical frequency. So please join us in the creation of Yavu Ra as the capsule phrase. And so once again, we like to mention this before we get started. Please welcome that childhood imagination. Allow yourself to just be in a realm of cartoons, in this wild, fanciful movie realm. For many of us here, it's like as soon as we reach in there, this filter goes, I can't. That's okay. That is okay. If that's where you're at, that is okay. We simply just hold a willingness. We hold a willingness to go, okay, I'm going to sit here with a group of 30 people online right now, and we're going to go into this imaginatory realm of energy in our body with an understanding that just maybe that might actually do something. Because there's this sort of filter that each of us will have to break through, and some of us will get there instantly. But if you're one of those people, take heart. You are not alone. In the beginning, for me, when I started sending energy, like I said last week, the people would say, like, just make this orb of energy in your mind, right? And I'd be like, but I don't know how do I do that? And so the method of the creation of that for me came with the allowance of just letting myself go into this weird cartoon brain realm where I'm like, well, maybe it's like this, and it's like you're drawing this cartoon in your mind. And what we find is, for those that are willing to really step in there, that's actually what creates it. That's what allows it to become real. And so yes, I'm going on a long rant about all that. Let's go ahead and begin with the energy clearing, guys. Otherwise we'll be here all day, you know that. So slide in into your own world. There's no mudras or mantras. You don't have to hold your back straight. You can itch yourself or change your position at any time. But let's just begin here today by gently closing our eyes. Start those just deep, deliberate, slow breaths. All the way down in your belly like there's a balloon or a basketball down there. And you're just going to be real gently and softly and even a little bit exaggeratedly just puffing yourself up. And as you exhale, we just really squeeze the balloon. We go all the way down to the bottom. As you do that, as you squeeze that out breath, understand that you're amongst a group of people all over the world in this very moment right now, priming that energetic pump inside your body, preparing to receive new energy, preparing to truly restructure those invisible, non-physical layers of your energy body amongst a group of people all over the world gathered here for the very same purpose. We were led here because there's another reason, there's another task, there's another version of you showing up at this stage of the journey. And so let's start out with that synchronizing breath. And so I'll count from 3 to 1, and let's all here together take a deep, slow breath in. We'll hold it for a quick moment, and then we'll let that breath out with that rich And so let's take that breath in. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Good job. Let that breath go all the way down. Very good. Let's do one more of these. And on this next breath, we start reaching into that childhood imagination, and it's going to be like we're joining as a sphere all together in a multi-dimensional, non-physical realm. For some of us, it'll begin to appear like a string or a cord connecting upward from the top of your head, and some of us may begin to perceive or choose to perceive the non-physical version of you linking up in a circular fashion or in an orb of light with those other members of this group. As we take this next breath, I'd like you to watch the other members of this group rising up to meet you. And so let's do that together. Let's take a deep breath in 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Notice how in your own internal realm you begin to watch those other individuals in the group starting to rise like a balloon around you. Little orbs of light beginning to move upwards. Let's take one more deep, slow breath in. We are connecting ourselves in a 4th density energetic bubble for the purpose of healing, activation, true safety, and true alliance with that source energy and the multi-dimensional versions of ourselves present here today. Let's synchronize that energy. Take a deep breath in with me. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. Please allow your higher self to meet you wherever you are in that internalized realm. As you hear my voice, guides and guardians, ancestors, family members, galactic family, all of those gathered here together today on behalf of the members of this multidimensional soul group, we honor you, we thank you for your presence, for your healing, and for your activation. As we ask that you bring your energy and your intention and your focus upward to the very top of your head, right at the crown. As we begin the crown chakra depressurization process, I'll recite a mantra in Sanskrit. Just allow your body, allow your emotions. We're in a safe place here today. Here we go. So let's bring that energy up to the very top of your head. In 3, 2, 1. Om Shrim Savishwaraya Namaha. Om Shrim Param Jyotishe Namaha. Om Shrim Param Brahmaya Namaha. Om Shrim Param Karunyaya Namaha. Om Shrim Param Pavitraya Namaha. Ogam Satyam. Ogam Satyam. Ogam Satyam. Take a nice, slow, gentle, easy breath in. As we acknowledge the childhood self in whatever form, as we acknowledge the higher self, as we acknowledge the presence of our guides and guardians, especially the future version, the future aspect of you that is gathered here to assist you in this process. And we allow the construction, the visual representation of a simple staircase to be formed in front of us in our internal realm. 10 simple steps leading down in front of us, with an understanding that as you allow this image to form inside you, you are amongst a group of individuals all over the world doing the same thing, preparing to descend deeper into yourself, preparing to go deeper into the true version of you and what you chose to become in this life. And so, on that next breath, look down in front of you and notice those 10 steps forming. Notice what they're made out of. Notice what color they are. When you allow the imagination to kick in, we may even notice there's a handrail going down one side. Upon looking closer, you may even notice the areas in which it has been worn from years of use. You may have a staircase that is familiar to you, or a place from another stage of your life, or something new altogether. For some of you gathered here together today, the image may constantly change or morph. We simply allow what is and understand that we are about to descend deeper into that control room, into the base of the fire inside your body. On that next breath, look down at your feet in your mind's eye. Just notice what you're wearing. Notice what age you are in this infinite moment. Notice where you are. You have been brought to this very important moment in time for the purpose of releasing old programming, old shame, old toxicity from the sacral chakra. Let's begin descending down as I count from 10 to 1. Let's walk down those steps together. Today we'll pause at the solar plexus in the center of your body and create a movement of energy before descending downward. Let's take those 10 steps. Here we go. Walk down with me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gentle breath in. Very good. Focus that energy right in the center of your body, right at the base of your rib cage. We're going to help you guys open up that energy and move it downward into the sacrum. So I'm going to start out today by sending a gentle pulse into the body of everyone here. Allow yourself to receive this energy. We're going to go right into the solar plexus. Here we go. And so let's all take a deep breath in here together in 3, 2, 1. Gentle breath in. Very good. Some of you will feel some warmth in your body. Good job. Let's grab that little energetic bubble some of you guys are creating in your world, and I'll also be helping with that. Let's just grab that movement of energy in the solar plexus and we'll start scooting it downward. Very good. Nice and gentle. Some of you guys are going to feel the intestines, the large and small intestine. You'll feel some of the energy moving in the gut. That's very good as we move down closer, just past the belly button. Very good. And we'll bring that right down, right underneath the belly button, hovering just above those genitals, the reproductive centers in the body. And as we bring our energy and awareness right down there, we allow the childhood self, those guides and guardians, to once again enter, and we start creating, and we allow the rotation, a spiral of energy to be created around the sacrum and the sacral chakra. It's like a whirlpool or a washing machine. For some of you, your body will begin to rock gently. Allow that energy to kick in. Allow yourself to feel any of the old programs that start to rise up in the body. Ideas about worthiness, about shame, old experiences, old feelings. For those of you who would like to make an additional layer of a connection with that energy in the body, you can take one or both of your hands and simply place them right underneath the belly button. Make a physical connection. Allow the body to begin to swivel or rock. Notice the emotions that arise. In the next few moments, we'll be taking a very deep breath in. And as we exhale, we will begin with the root word Vang. Allow any emotions, allow any memories. This is old energy going down the drain. Let's begin that process. Take a deep breath in with me in 3, 2, 1. Deep breath in. Let's bring in the shame trigger. Bring in any childhood triggers. Bring in any childhood emotions. Deep breath in. Gentle breaths. Allow your emotions. Allow the confusion. Allow the focus. Allow the thought forms. Allow the memories. Let's take one more deep breath in together and just allow whatever shows up. Your body's bringing up old energy. Simply allow it to pass. Take a deep breath in. Gentle, slow breaths. We're going to do one more of those simple transmissions. Allow your energy body to kick in. Allow those emotions. Allow the questioning. Allow the thought forms. Allow the memories. This is old energy going down the drain. For those of you all here in this group, members of this multidimensional soul group, for those guides, guardians, ancestors, and family members, we allow for the forgiveness. We allow the release. We allow this healing energy to release or remove any emotional or energetic toxicity from the body, known or unknown, in this life or beyond. So it is. Good. Gentle breath in when you're ready, and as you exhale, simply release those threads, release those cords, release the emotion of shame, release the emotion of unacknowledgement or the feeling of unacknowledgement, release the program of undesirability, of unworthiness. We release the shame and the lack around our expression of our true intimacy. Let's take a deep breath in and seal that energy before we ignite the flame. Let's do it as a group. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. At the bottom of that breath, disconnect. We thank you for what you have taught us. We thank you for this experience. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Take a deep, slow breath in when you're ready. One more stop to go. Gather that emotion. Gather that energy. Gather that passion. Gather the rising current of expectation and prana and kundalini and all of those thought forms and whatever's inside you, and bring it solely, completely into that realm of imagination, into that version of you existing on an alternate dimensional plane in which we are gathered as a group at the base of a pyramid. Inside a great hall, and in front of you is a dish of water. Notice the other members of this group gathered around you in a circle inside this temple, and in the dish of water in the midst of us, you notice that liquid, that ancient primordial source energy to be reignited once again. Acknowledge in that internal realm the other members of this multidimensional group gathered together with you here today. Understand that you are also interacting on an alternate realm, in an alternate plane, in another life in which this process has been completed to perfection. That most optimal timeline. Begin bringing your focus and your energy into your true heart's desires, into that mission, into that healing, into the activation of whatever that is coming up in your life. Even if you don't know what it is right now, today we begin the process of igniting that flame in you once again. As we begin chanting and using the phrase Ya, Vu, Ra, allow that energy in your internal realm to move toward that liquid, that energy in the center of the pyramid at the base, and watch how we ignite those blue flames inside the body once again. Watch the flame rise upward. Please join me in this process. Allow your own internal perception of this ignition. Congratulate yourself. Thank yourself for taking this step. Here we go. Focus once again on that liquid at the base of the pyramid, the primordial energy source through which we will be igniting this flame. Here we go. Take a deep breath in with me in 3, 2, 1. Allow your body to drift. Allow your emotions. Allow that inner perceptual space. Honor what shows up as we begin to focus our energy back down into the sacrum, back down into that sacral chakra just above the genitals and the reproductive organs, and we acknowledge the ignition, the point of fire, the flame inside us once again. And as we prepare to finalize this ignition process, we once again welcome that childhood imagination, and we find ourselves as children gathered around a campfire, the most joyous, the most pure version of yourself that you can possibly be, whatever age that is. And as children, or whatever age it is, we find ourselves gathered around a campfire, that bonfire in the dark forest, that burning flame within each of us. We find ourselves gathered around those flames once again, and as we prepare for our final tone, we'll take 3 deep breaths. As we exhale that energy directly onto that fire, watching as we ignite those flames, those blue flames within us, sending that energy outward, allowing ourselves to truly receive the frequency of truth and the divine will, igniting that version of you. Find that childhood self in whatever form. Gather around that campfire. Let's do 3 breaths. On the third one, we allow that simple tone, the simple utterance of your soul's note. We move it upward to the crown. Allow whatever shows up in your space. This is your time, your ignition, your flame, your truth. Thank you. Let's take that first breath in. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Blow on those flames, blow on that fire. Watch the flames starting to grow. Watch the campfire you're creating. Let's do one more deep, rich breath. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Let that breath all the way down. Good job, everyone. This is your soul's note, your true vibration. Let's take that final breath in and bring that fire upward. Watch yourself igniting it. Watch these flames growing. This is your flame, the blue flame. Take that deep breath in. 3, 2, 1. Gently disconnect. And on that next breath, the very last thing we do is we look over our left shoulder here today. You just look over that left shoulder in your mind's eye as we acknowledge once again those guides, guardians, ancestors, family members, and especially the multidimensional versions of you. Yes, you that have gathered together here today to assist in this process. We honor all those of you present on the multidimensional planes, and we ask if there's anything else they need at this stage of the journey. All those present here, we allow the smooth receipt and integration of those energies over the next 24 to 48 hour period. New inspiration, new fire, new direction in the body. We honor all those of you gathered together here with us in the name of the one infinite creator. So it is, so it is, so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good job, everybody. Good job. Just disconnect at the top a little bit. We like to make a simple gesture. Oftentimes we say, what's mine is mine, what's theirs is theirs. What's mine is mine, what's theirs is theirs. What's mine is mine, what's theirs is theirs. And you just disconnect that energy. Sovereign, whole, clean, clear. Good job, everybody. Let yourselves come on back when you feel ready. That's a new process for a lot of us. Some of you guys are going to be a little unconscious. Some of you guys have been with us the whole time. That is perfect. Let yourself come on back. Let us know how you're doing. Oh. Let's skip on over. Good job, guys. So, as everyone kind of comes on back from this experience, just kind of let yourself recenter your energy. And I'd like you guys to be on the lookout for some new changes, some new waves of inspiration, especially waves of guidance, kind of new ideas where you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, what maybe should we, all of a sudden I want to, all those things. For a lot of us, when we really start opening up the sacral chakra specifically, suddenly this sort of new passion rises. For some people, I will say, as I sort of look up here trying to grab your comments, hopefully my screen will let me grab them. For some people, another way in which this will show up is we could get a little intense. We could get a little fiery. Sometimes we'll get a little aggressive even. And for some of us, that'll be that energy rising, asking to be channeled, asking to be used. And for some of us, in the days and hours after this session today, it will also manifest. I'm just going to say it because we're all adults here. For some of you here today, you will encounter the energy work that we did as feeling a little bit sexual. It might feel a little bit sensual. Sometimes that's a it can be a sensitive word to throw around when we're in situations like this. But it's very important to acknowledge that with the energy of the sacral chakra, because for some of us, when we open up this energy center, it's going to give you sensation of a more concentrated version of that energy. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that for some people, because for some of you they will, and usually within the next 24 hours after you open up the sacral chakra and start to let that energy flow, we will experience that energy in your own way. But I have to tell you, for a lot of you guys, it's not going to be necessarily a sexual energy. In fact, for a lot of people, it will show up as a creationary burst. For some people, they'll start writing. Other people, they'll even do something like they'll become super obsessed with music all of a sudden, and you'll go back and you'll grab all these old songs and you'll start singing, and you'll be in the car or whatever it is. You'll have this wave of passionate energy that will kick in. For some of us, it will show up physically, and we're like, well, I feel kind of aroused, and that's okay if you do. That's your own energy. That's your own sensation that you're feeling. But for other people, it's going to be like, oh, wow, I want to something, you don't know what it is, but allow that energy to move and allow it to be expressed on some level, whatever's appropriate for you. In some cases, we'll find that if we don't express it, we might get like, and you get a little tense. So allow yourself to feel what shows up, and you will probably, I'm just going to say this now, you're going to feel a bit different than you did last week. Last week was a lot about old wounds, a lot about, like I said earlier, we ripped the Band-Aid off. And this time, what we're doing is we're allowing for a new fire, a new flow, some new energy. So thank you. Yeah, some of us are very blocked there, and that is okay. That is a real thing. It totally happens. Oftentimes, honestly, just the fact that we will even be willing to go, hey, you guys, I've been blocked there. You know what I mean? For you to even type that in the chat will also tell you that your body's literally moving the energy right now. Oftentimes, that's how it works. It's like, I acknowledge I went through this thing, and I'm like, yeah, let's see what happens. That's allowing for the opening of that energy to be expressed, whether it's, this way or that way, this sensation or that one. Allow for it to move. Charlene says down there, I need to go run naked in the woods. Okay, that's a perfect example of a channel of passion, of energy showing up. It doesn't matter why, it's just the sensation of like, I want to, whatever it is, that's going to give you guys, as you continue to unlock the energies of the chakras or how they actually translate into the body, the feeling that you get. And for some people here today, you guys are going to be like, I don't know, I didn't really feel that much, Matthew. I felt a little emotion. It was this, it was that. For some of you guys, it'll be very subtle. Allow for the unpacking or the subtle ways in which this energy is going to reach you over the coming days. Because for some of us here, literally your sacrum, the sacral chakra, you're like, yeah, it's fine. It's totally legit. Not for everyone here, you know what I mean? Not everyone comes in with a crazy sacral chakra energy. For some of us, it's already working. And you're like, yep, I feel pretty good about that area of my life. Or oftentimes, we will have an internal recognition when we talk about the themes or the feelings that we get when we go through just the discussion in this class. And for some of us, we'll have an internalized feeling where we're like, oh, yeah, I know. But for others, we're like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I acknowledge it's there, but you might not feel it. So each and every person, it's always a little bit individual. Catherine says, just heavy side the whole time, not sure what that's about. Okay, check this out, Catherine. That's a really good sign, especially the heavy side, because here's the deal. Each and every person will also have an unconscious mechanism of expression of a trapped energy in the body. Some of you guys are going to yawn, this whole thing. Other people are going to sit there and have an internal valve kick in, and you're going to go, yeah. And you're going to go through some variation of that process. Whatever that is, your body, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether you're locked into the moment and like, yep, here we go, lighting a blue flame, whether you're squarely in that or you're observing the process that's occurring, just the fact that you mentioned, I don't know, maybe I'm just sighing here, that's your body going through its unconscious release. Other people are going to have burps. Some of you are going to have, like I said, yawns. It's Honestly, some people are going to have farting. This is a real thing, you guys. Each of us has their own manner of expression or release of energy, and also, the most common version of that is tears, but it's going to be a little bit different. Yes, coughing. Thank you, Angela. I was looking for the other message. Some of you guys are going to get, it's almost like this dry gas, like a dry kind of sensation that's going to open up in your throat, and you're going to even feel in the moment, you're going to tell yourself, I don't want to cough. Why do I have to cough? I don't even cough. And just the act of in the meditation is going to let you release an energy. And so it's a little bit different for everyone. I might have diverted the original intention of your comment, Catherine, so forgive me if you're like, that's not what I meant, Matthew. But no, that is real. And the reality is, Catherine, even if you're sitting here going, and maybe this is not aimed at you, so forgive me if I'm isolating your name. I apologize. But even if you're one of the people that's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe, that is totally okay. We are all led here for a reason. So I just like to say that because I want to allow for, radical, as I drool on myself here, radical allowance of whatever the state is. And I'm going to say something kind of crude because I want to make this as a point. Even if as you're going through this process, you're one of those people that's sitting here going, yeah, I don't know, fuck this. Because some of us are going to have this moment in the next 5 or 6 weeks as we go through this where you're going to hear something, you're going to be like, what if? That's a good sign because that's telling us, oh, here's a source of energy. There's something in your body. There's a reaction. And so some of us, we might be like, yeah, it's cool. It's not for me. But for others, we're going to be like, oh, okay, there's something going on. And so it shows up differently for each and every person. So that's why I like to say radical allowance, like whatever it is, especially when this internal voice kicks in and it's all, this is dumb, I'm doing it wrong, what are we doing? Because I'll tell you what, man, I went to like 2 years straight at one point, 2015 to 17, of all these group meditations in my old hometown, and I would sit there and I'd be like, this is really dumb, why am I doing this? And I think that's this weird process that I had to go through because there's these programs and stuff. And anyway, I feel like I went on a rant at your comment, so please, it's not about you. I'm just kind of pinging off my own experience. Body jerks, muscle spasms. Good job, Charlene. For some of you guys, you may experience some old themes of just like intimate sort of patterns. You guys might find yourself feeling, attracted to new people or just having experience of attraction or chemistry. I don't want to say necessarily attracted to new people because it shows up differently. Some of us are in like relationships where we're like, I have no need for that, Matthew. I am as well. That's not the way it will translate. But what I do want you to look out for is sort of a chemistry or an affinity that will be present or created between yourselves and others. I like to be very specific about how that energy will manifest because I have to say it's not always like when we do sacral stuff, it's not always about sensuality or sexuality, but there's also this, it's like a chemistry, an affinity, and a connection that will take place among humans that manifest that way. And yes, I know we've been going on and on here today. We are pretty much done, so please throw any other comments in there. I know I'm rambling a lot at you guys. Thank you for receiving this info. Kimberly had heat surging through your body, spine, and out of your hands. That's a good point. Or excuse me, that's a good thing to mention, Kimberly, because we have the pericardium meridian. 2 openings on the pericardium right here, which are very important. I mean, there's tons of openings on the hand, but these are important. In fact, you will know where it is, guys, because when you make a fist, where your middle finger hits your palm, right there. And so those are important points for when energy is transmitted outward. There's tons of other ones, but when we go through, especially sacral chakra energy, because it will also have a very important relationship with the pericardium meridian. It's not the only one. I like to always say that because I'm definitely not one of the absolute people, but we find that when we experience the energy in the hand upon release of that energy, for some of us, it'll be a pericardium-based energy. So thank you. Thanks, guys. Yes, we have been here all day. I appreciate y'all. So real quickly, for next week, we are going to be moving into one of our secondary chakras, the spleen chakra, which for, just between now and next week, how are you going to know where that energy might be? Well, first off, it's on the left side right next to the actual spleen, which, just so you know, it's a little bit underneath your stomach, just to the left. Literally right in there. If you were to stick a little hook right up under the left side of your ribs, you'll hit the spleen. We'll help you find it next week, but we have a very important chakra there. How are you going to get in touch with spleen chakra energy over the coming week, guys? Just notice when you feel frustrated. Notice when you feel frustrated, when you feel like worried and like, oh, it's like this worried frustration. That's a very common emotion right now associated with the spleen. And so we're going to help release some of that energy. And yeah, we're pretty much done. We've been here all day. I love you guys. We're going to see you next week. And don't worry, you're going to get this recording later and the slides. It does take a couple hours to process, but check in on Facebook, and good job here this week. Let us know how you're doing. And I think we are done. Thank you. Good job, guys.